what role and importance do you feel that storytelling has? Not even just like because it's been your line of work, but like culturally and for humanity and for our relationships with nature in the grand scheme.
Well, stories is how we make sense of a lot of what's going on in life. I ask you what you did today, and you'll tell me a story. You'll tell me a narrative, and that's basically how we make sense of our life. And there's places in our brain that are hooked for stories. You can deliver information to somebody, that's one thing, but you tell a story, they really will stick.
I find it's like easier to learn, even just like if somebody tells me a string of facts, I'm kind of not gonna, it's gonna go everywhere. But if you can connect it up with a story, even like a partial story about something, and you can really remember it and grasp it. So.
Absolutely. I remember hearing the storyteller telling traditional African stories. And she said, well, I went on a bicycle trip one time across Uganda. I'm like, boing, my interest went right. I listened much better to that story when I heard her telling her personal story.
Makes it come alive. It's funny, I was literally right before getting on here, I was talking to my husband. We're expecting our first kid, and I've been collecting books and stories and things because that was always so important to me as a kid, to read and have stories read to me. And so I've been building this like child library, and we were having this discussion about like age appropriateness for text, and not so much in terms of like, because people don't give kids enough credit for how smart they really can be and what they can absorb, right? But my argument was just that, like, it's not so much about what information is being presented, it's how it's being presented, because, kids respond so well to story. It's like it has to be engaging. It has to be something that's going to spark wonderment. But I say that about kids, but I think it's true for adults too. It's like you get hooked in if there's something that like gets the gleam in the eye and encourages the curiosity, right?
Right. My dad was a pretty good storyteller, and my mom would tell the story about we'd do whatever activity we were doing when me and my brother were toddlers or little kids, and they would do some activity during the day, and then he'd come home from work and she'd tell him what we did, and then at bedtime he'd tell a story about the little boy who lived in Round Bay, and which is where it was the name of the community we lived in. And he just would tell the story, and to tell basically whatever she told him, and it was like the way of reliving it, and it was totally engaging. I tried that with my child, and that really worked really well. Just change the name a little bit, and just made it a little different, and then I'd add things to it, and well, he went out into the garden and he dug sweet potatoes, and then along came a raccoon, and next thing and that was a great way to have a bedtime story, And I also found, like, especially you all being new parents, sometimes the kid just screaming and crying and just won't just absolutely unconsolable, and I'd say, you know what, I saw this little dog and he was chased by a pony, and just start this little narrative going, and it was amazing how that would pull him out of a tantrum. So
suddenly they're like hooked, like, wait a minute, I want to know what about this.
Yeah, I scream, I'm not going to be able to hear the story. And so, just keep that in mind. You may need that one day.
Yeah, I think I actually vaguely recall, because I'm the oldest of three, and I remember one time as kids where I diffused my two younger sisters arguing by just launching into some silly made up thing, because then it's like, well, how could you keep arguing if you're just going to be laughing at this silly story,
Right, there you go.
Have a cat visitor. This is Eugene.
Hello, Eugene.
We have this great photograph of my little brother sitting on my dad's lap, and my dad's like he's like got this hand on his face, like exasperated because he's read my brother this story over and over again for like the millionth time, and he just like would listen, just read it again. He couldn't get enough. So it's just really, really funny. So we pray for that too, Ellen.
Yeah, I have all these CDs, and now and then one of the parents will say, Yeah, we had to lose that CD. Couldn't find it for 2 months. Then it revives again, and the kid may be onto something else. But when something resonates, it really resonates. I always come resistant to try to tell the same story twice to a group. But a lot of people say, no, we want to hear it.